Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the Mesa City Council study session for the afternoon of December the 2nd. All of our council is present. The first item on our agenda for this meeting is to review the agenda for our meeting upstairs later this evening. So council, please take a look at that document. Let us know if you'd like any additional information or have any questions regarding anything on that agenda. Mr. Luna, I know you had a question.
Mr. Brady, 7D, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm going to, for 7D, correct?
7D,
I'm going to let the city attorney, take that on.
I'm going to actually ask Jim about the FCC ruling as well and how it applies.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Jim. Why are we doing this?
So 7D is to comply with state statutes. It's really just to provide uniformity for all municipalities throughout the state. It requires for the city of Mesa now, the licensing will go through the state for all municipalities. And so all the licensing now will become uniform through the state. And it also provides certain limitations that don't necessarily affect the city of Mesa, but affect some other cities that had more channels than 4 channels. And so it'll affect some other municipalities that had more channels than the city of Mesa.
But we'll continue to collect the 5% franchise fees?
Yes.
The 5% will continue, the 4 channels that we have will continue, or the ability to have the 4 channels will continue. Some other cities were utilizing even more channels than that, so it affected some other cities differently.
And how is that different from the FCC? That's totally different, the ruling of FCC? Have you?
So yeah, there is a number of actually recent FCC channel or FCC rulings, and so I'm not sure which one you're going to talk about or which one you have a question about.
The 5% and whether that would go back to the cable companies?
Oh, the offset concept. Yeah, I think there's still a lack of clarity on how that's going to be applied from state to state. And so, but right now the state statute, will be entitled to the 5%. But whether the FCC keeps encroaching in both the state and municipal realm, and so, how it's going to work out as far as the future, I can't provide you a guarantee. But right now, we believe we'll get the 5%.
Okay, great. Sorry, Beth. Thank you. Yeah.
Mayor and Council, I just want to add one more thing, because I know you guys sometimes get concerns about service and service complaints. We can no longer handle those as a city. Those complaints either need to go to the FCC or the Attorney General's office down at the state. So they can come to us and we will refer them to the appropriate place for any service complaints.
So then will they get redirected to Cox Communication after they reach the Attorney General's office, or is that the hope?
That's the hope.
Right.
We can also provide them with numbers for Cox, but in the past, we've been able to help with some of those complaints and resolve some of those complaints, but the statute actually requires that they go to the state at this point.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Councilmember Luna. I had some of the same questioning on that. I want to back up to 3C, Mayor, just about the fire department. They're buying 50 heart monitors. And I know to some they may think that that's quite an expensive acquisition, but our heart monitors, $44,000 a piece, and 50 of them comes to roughly a couple $1 million. And they have about a 6 to 7 year shelf life. So I want to thank the fire department for keeping them in the queue to help reach out and protect lives in our city. There is a little bit of rebate on that as well, but regardless, they're about $40,000 when you're all done. I'm through with that.
Sounds like a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councilmember Duff, did you have a question?
Yes, I had some comments and then one question. First of all, I just want to bring attention to the public because on the primary is moving into the first Tuesday of the year. So on August, whatever, I have to look at the date, first Tuesday in 2020 will be our primary election date. So that's changing in several weeks earlier. I think we were already, the last Tuesday, it was the last Tuesday, I should remember from last year. Hasn't been that long. So I just wanted to bring attention to that so that people make sure that they vote, and if they're on vacation or out of town or whatever, that they make arrangements to make sure to vote. Then also I wanted to bring attention to item 7C, which is the vaping ordinance, to prohibit use in public facilities, public places, and certain places of employment. I don't know if a little expansion on that, or just to.
Well, this is the introduction, so we
Just the
can
introduction,
permission now,
okay.
or we can do it next week during the public hearing, either way.
Okay,
Yeah, and there are several items under item 7C, or 7, that are all being set for public hearings next week. All of them, like you mentioned, the change of the election date,
Okay.
the vaping ordinance, the design standards, they're all important topics that I think we want to talk about. But I wonder if rather than, maybe we can do it today, or we can do it a week from today when we have the public hearings, or we can do both.
okay, all right.
Yeah, we're just
So
setting
I
the dates
just
for the
wanted-
public hearings, but yeah, we could,
I just wanted to bring
Whatever,
awareness to
Council.
it, not
Yep.
Yeah.
really go into
Okay.
it, just to
Yeah.
bring awareness to it, so that the public has
Sure.
plenty of time for input. So
good.
explain a little bit more on that process then for them.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you'd like, we can, the idea here is that we're setting the date for the public hearing on December 9th, but you're also taking action that same day. So either, I mean, right now, we could have Natalie come up and just give a brief summary of that, or we could do it during the public hearing process.
Okay, she's not here, so I guess.
right there.
Oh, right there. She already moved. She was just skipping across the room.
So whatever council's preference, you, what, she's here, was your just?
Okay,
You want me to provide a little, okay.
that would be up to the mayor.
Yeah, or both. And also the effective date, assuming that we do this next Monday, it won't take effect for 6 months.
Okay.
And so there's going to be ample
That's part of
opportunity to educate the public on what the appropriate and inappropriate places to vape
Yeah,
will be.
absolutely. So
Yeah, that's
the very short answer, Mayor and Councilmember Duff, is that what we're trying to do is add vaping to the existing smoke-free ordinance. So what we are suggesting is not taking away people's ability to vape if they want to in their own private residences or in some private places, or even to buy that. It's just that we want to treat it just like cigarettes today. So it's more about secondhand vaping, vapors that are out there and that the public is concerned about. And so we're just suggesting that we add vaping to the existing ordinance. And then, as the mayor just suggested, we would have 6 months after next Monday, if it's approved, to go ahead and go out to the public and make absolutely certain that people understand what's happening and that we go through sort of a public education system so that they're used to it by the time it becomes law.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Also, I wanted to make a comment about the recycling program. I know we had it at council a month or so ago, and I had a meeting today with Scott Boucher. Thank you for your time and going over. This is a difficult adjustment for those who are passionate about recycling, like me. So we talked about ways that we could convey the recycling program. But I just also wanted to say that like the plastics 3 through 7 aren't being recycled at all. Even if you put them in the barrel, even whatever, there is no market. So if a recycler receives those, they go into trash. And so us eliminating those items from our recycling program isn't saying we won't recycle them, it's saying no one is recycling them. And so it is where we are. Hopefully our things will change and that we can recycle them as maybe the products are more competitive, or there's a lot of things, but all we can do right now is really concentrate on reducing our waste and narrowing our program and recycling those materials that have a recycling life to them. And then my last comment on is 8D. So I just wanted to have a little bit more clarification on the city code amendment.
Yeah. Mayor and council, this is a change really for clarification in several aspects. A couple years ago, the city auditor audited the public trust fund, and one of the recommendations, or a number of the recommendations, was to codify and is all the policies that the city attorney's office had. So I did do that, and I codified all the policies. And what this does is by code actually requires the policy in compliance with the policies, and also allows the city auditor to audit the trust fund. Right now, under the charter, audits can occur because council directed them, or the city manager has directed those audits to occur. I wanted the ability also to ask for an audit or have the auditor just audit the trust fund without having to, similar to the city manager. And so I talked to the city auditor regarding that, so I've added also, there's a sentence within that provision that allows for the audit of the trust fund. And it also clarifies within the first section the power of the city attorney as far as bringing cases and settling cases, and regarding appeals of cases. There's a case a number of years ago out of Division II that dealt with a smaller municipality in which the court had determined that, made a determination regarding the ability for a city to provide direction to the city attorney through an executive session, but subsequently didn't specifically vote regarding whether or not to appeal a particular case. It's an unfortunate decision in this regard, is that there's many appeals that occur in litigation, especially in criminal cases that get appealed. We don't bring every single appeal to you to vote on to whether or not to appeal. And so I think that case, if it were ever to be brought up again for a decision in the Court of Appeals, especially in Division I, it would get overturned. But this is to make it very clear regarding the ability to both appeal cases and settle cases on behalf of the city.
Great.
Which is what is, and so what's been added to the code is consistent with what's been occurring for more than a decade within the city attorney's office.
Okay, well, thank you for the explanation.
Mr. Thompson, right before we get, I just want to double down on something that Jen asked about the recycling program. When we went out for GAIN night a few weeks ago, I think there was a lot of chatter and a lot of questions around the recycling program. And I think there's a perception that perhaps the city is somehow retreating, or that we're not as committed to recycling as we once were. And I think it's important that we let people know that that is absolutely not the case. We are talking about making some changes just to acknowledge the reality of recycling now. There are certain commodities that no longer have any value, and we just cannot recycle them. So I think the plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, the last time we talked about this, is for the next 6 months, we're trying, make some tweaks to the program with the hope that we won't have to increase fees. But after that 6 months, we'll reevaluate, and I think there is a consensus among the community that, hey, why are you, yes, I'll pay an extra $1 or $2 a month, to maintain the recycling program. Why are you making these changes? That's not what's going on here. It's not about, a lack of commitment to recycling. It's just about re-educating. We all need to become a little more sophisticated in the way that we recycle. It used to be that we told people, hey, if you have a question about it, just throw it in the blue barrel. Just, anything goes, we'll sort it out when it gets to the recycling center. We can't do that anymore because contamination is a problem, and there's certain things that we just cannot recycle. So this is an evolving situation, but I think we need to reiterate to the public that this does not represent any type of a retreat or a lack of commitment to recycling on the part of the city. It's just more about educating all of us as to what the new reality is on recycling.
And Mayor, we're not the only city. This is a national conversation. You can go to any national conference in every city across America, because there's no market, there's no up the line, down the line, however you want to say it, for recycling those products. If we were to receive the products that we once received, as Councilmember Duff said, they would just go to the landfill. So we want to be very kind of upfront with everyone about what we're saying we're recycling, because without, if we collected those other items, they would not be recycled. I mean, we could pretend that we're putting them in the blue barrel, but at the end of the day, when they would get sorted, they would end up in the landfill. So until, we want to give some time to kind of see how the market responds. We hope that over time that will create another market for that, but right now, it's a pretty simple choice about what they're willing to accept and what they won't, that will go to the landfill.
And the point is that we're not making the choice not to recycle it. Our recyclers are making that choice. So we can give it to them all day long. And it's not a matter of it's costing more to recycle. They're not even recycling it at all, won't even consider it. So they're taking it to the landfill. So it's not like we're saying as a city, we're not going to recycle it because it's not cost effective for us. We're saying when we give it to them, they just part it and it's just thrown into landfill. So in order to reduce the cost of collecting it, we might as well just go ahead and put it in the trash. it's sad, but it's true. So we're not making those choices. So as a city, we're looking at all the things we can do within our control to be more sustainable and promote that awareness. But we're doing the best we can, and the materials we are collecting, we are recycling, and there is there is a market for that, so we're able to sustain it. The other materials, it's not even our choice to recycle it. They're throwing it away, so there's no use in even paying for materials that are going to landfill.
Amen, thank you. Mr. Thompson?
Mayor, going back to 7C, I have mixed emotions about this because, and I'm wondering if we shouldn't just pull it and table it for further discussion as a council, or for Natalie to come and really brief us on this, because the smoke-free environment that was set up through law was done for secondhand smoke and cancerous causing smoke. The only thing that comes out of the vapors are water. I don't think anybody's ever died from secondhand water expulsion. So I, as I said, I have mixed reviews about this, or mixed emotions about this, because to me, this is almost like over-regulating and jumping into the fear-mongering of what's happening with people that are choosing to use the vapors. But again, the only thing that they're producing is water vapor. They're not producing any type of toxic smoke of any kind. So again, I have mixed feelings about whether we should be adding this as something that we're going to implement into an ordinance.
Well, I guess there have been studies, as we all know recently, linking deaths to e-cigarettes and to vaping, and several cities in the region have already acted, taking this step. So I personally, I'd prefer to see us go forward with it a week from now when we have this public hearing. If there's folks from the industry that want to come in and educate us, I'd welcome that. But I think it is a very timely topic for us to discuss. Mr. Luna.
Having worked in school districts for many, many years, we have to have some kind of mechanism to control students vaping. And this certainly is a measure that will allow us to control students from vaping. They can go to any bathroom. I mean, it says no smoking, but there's no vaping on there. And so we want to make sure that we're protecting our youngsters.
But couldn't the school districts adopt their own policies as far as vaping? And I think there's already a discussion for state laws to mandate that you have to be 21 or 18 or older, or 21 or older, something of that nature, before you can, they're trying to make it the same as cigarettes. But again, the only thing that's coming out of these e-cigarettes and so forth, is just water vapor. It's not tobacco. And so I don't want to really jump on the fear mongering of the e-cigs and the vape pens are detrimental to society like cigarettes are, because they certainly aren't. But it's just the over-regulation of something that I don't think necessarily causes cancer amongst people that sniff water vapor. I don't know.
Personally, I think this is a great debate that we ought to have a week from tonight when we have a public hearing. And I think we ought to invite the industry folks to come in and dispel any misinformation that's out there. And we ought to invite the health advocates to come in and we'll have a great debate over it and cast our votes.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mayor. I would like to continue this. It's not so much the tobacco, it's the chemicals in the vaping that is causing the deaths and damage to the lungs. There's a lot of standards out there now that they're pushing against vaping. But I'd like to see it continue.
And that was my point, was that we should pull it and we should have this debate and have this conversation before we put it into the public eye for the public to then come in and debate. That was my only concern.
Yeah. Well, I think we agree on the need for more discussion. And I think leaving it on the consent agenda, or leaving it on the agenda, is setting the stage for that to happen a week from today.
I have one more.
Yes, Mr. Freeman.
I want to think on our shared active transport vehicles, 4A and B. There's a lot of work with our city staff, our fire, police, city attorney, and others. I mean, they did a marvelous job. Transportation, and I'm glad to see this coming forward. I think currently we just have 2 vendors, if that's correct. And so, I mean, there's a lot of staff time and work for this. So hopefully, I'm glad to see this ordinance and fee schedule coming forward. So thank you for everybody, what you did.
Thank you. Other questions regarding tonight's agenda? Okay, thank you very much. So currently, there is nothing off of the consent agenda. We do have one item of recognition at the beginning. We'll talk about the autism certification that happened a couple weeks ago. This is our first opportunity to talk about it in a council meeting. Proceeding on then with the agenda for this meeting, item 2A on our agenda is to hear a presentation about the PHX East Valley Partnership's work with the City of Mesa. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Mayor and Council, hello. I'm Jay O'Donnell. I'm the Assistant Economic Development Director for the City of Mesa. While the East Valley Partnership folks get set up, I will go ahead and introduce them. To my right, it is my pleasure to introduce Denny Barney. He is the President and CEO of Phoenix East Valley Partnership. And he's a 6th-generation Arizonan, a former Maricopa County supervisor, as well as a successful business owner. And he's been in the position about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half now. And then I'm not sure Mike Hutchinson needs much of an introduction. However, I will give him one.
He's new to Mesa.
He's all over, but he actually works for as the Executive Vice President of the East Valley Partnership. And he previously worked for the City of Mesa for 28 years. 5 of those years as the city manager. I will turn it over to Denny and Mike.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you. And Jay, thank you for that introduction. We're delighted to be here. Mr. Hutchinson is going to pass around to each of you, if that's acceptable, a piece of collateral material that we just revamped after many years. We're going through a little bit of a rebrand, and so we just wanted each of you to have a copy of that as we're going through our presentation today. So we're delighted to be here. We recognize that time is tight and time is precious, and so we'll run through this presentation. I'm certain that we're not going to share anything with you that you haven't heard. Many of you are more familiar with the partnership than I am. My history with the partnership goes back to a private citizen that supported it financially. I ended up serving on the board for a number of years, and then, of course, had the opportunity of working with the partnership as I served in an elected role. So it's been fun to kind of come full circle and be back with the partnership. The one thing that's been constant in my observation is the ability of the partnership to bring people together. As you know, the partnership doesn't have any legislative authority, doesn't have a budget that's significant, but it has a 4-decade history of convening and advocating in a pretty unique and powerful way for the East Valley. We operate in a kind of an interesting space. We work closely with our partners at the cities and towns, with the economic development teams that work in each of the cities, specifically with Jay and with Bill and everybody there. But we also work with the chambers. We work with GPEC. So we're kind of in this interesting spot that's, in some respects, undefined. On the other hand, we've operated there since the inception, and Mesa has been part of that from the very beginning, and so we're grateful for your support. Just quickly, I'm going to run through some slides. Again, we're not going to share anything here tonight that you haven't seen before. Our focus is really advocacy. We, as a partnership, recognize that we have a compelling story to tell as the PHX East Valley. And if we leave it to others, we think that part of that narrative gets lost. And certainly those that have been in this conversation, each of you that serve in elected office, you understand that as you're out and about. Sometimes it's easy. We have a great relationship with the City of Phoenix, but City of Phoenix has a different value proposition than we do in the East Valley. So we want to make sure that that story is told. And if we rely on the ACA or GPEC, they're trying to spread the love in a different way. We want to make sure that as people are looking and considering what options and opportunities exist here, that they can hear firsthand from those of us that live here, that work here, that choose to be here because of how great it is. We work with all the cities and towns in the PHX East Valley. What's powerful, though, is that the majority of our funding just over 3/4 of our funding actually comes from private businesses and individuals that believe in investing in the work that we do. The notion that all ships rise and sink with the tide. And so if we can get out there and share the good word of the East Valley and why you need to be here and share that story, for better or worse, Mike and I are nothing more than just glorified cheerleaders, I suppose. And in the end, we're out there beating that drum. We do it every day in meetings, in conversations, in panels, as we convene and bring people together. And while we're not much to look at, we're not afraid to work, and we're not afraid to tell the story of why people need to be here. So we advocate, we facilitate, we convene. Really, that's all we do. Again, we don't have any legislative authority like you do. We don't pass laws, we don't change code. We don't have a big budget to throw around, but we have the ability to bring people together and focus on things that matter most to our community. We have a number of committees that are very active, and I know that at some point in time, many of you have been involved in those committees. We have a legislative advocacy committee that's very active and just finishing up their work right now that will put forward the key priorities that are represented by the stakeholders and those that are involved in the partnership. And so it can't cover everything. Obviously, everybody has nuances that are important to them, but we try to cover as much as we can to make sure that as we go down to the legislature and take an active role in sharing those messages, that not only are we unified with the cities and towns and the chambers and others, that also those businesses that may not have a voice are represented. And so that's been a powerful tool that we've had for many, many years. We have a lot of different projects that we get invited to be part of. You're familiar with all of these. Probably the newest one is an invitation that we've accepted to really be part of working alongside the city of Mesa and ASU and some of the other stakeholders on that in that area, and that's Councilman Thompson's district, obviously, so he'll certainly be part of that. But to consider what can we do to help bring on those resources in a vibrant and powerful way. It's really, in our observation, one of the very best assets that we have in the entire region. And we've come a long ways based on your work and your investment. And there's a great story to tell, but I think that story is just starting. Even though we're quite a year, a couple of decades almost into that turnover process, we think there's much to do. And I serve on the ASU Research Park Board of Directors, and I look at what that's been for Tempe and Chandler, and the way that that benefits even Gilbert and Mesa that don't touch even or border that research park, and yet we have that same opportunity on the Polytechnic campus right there in the city of Mesa, in a critical location that has all of these vital resources together with the educational infrastructure and the airport and all of the infrastructure that the city's put in, and all of these assets that together really create a great opportunity. So we're excited to be part of that conversation. We do a number of events, 4 every year that are kind of our signature events. We have one of those tomorrow right here across the street at the Mesa Arts Center. We're excited about that. That's our annual Thought Leader Forum, and we're excited to be in Mesa. We actually effectively sold out and then opened up some more seats, so we were going to just occupy the bottom floor of the Piper Theater, and then ended up jumping upstairs because we had such great demand, and we're excited about that. Right now we've got about 400 people that are RSVP'd to be with us and talk about the jobs of the future. And much of that's happening right here in Mesa, so we're excited to have that here and to be part of that. We also, together with your team and others, we want to make sure that the story is told consistently about what's happening out here in this part of the world. And we've been very successful in recent months with a lot of earned media. That's hard to come by, and Mesa's been showcased in much of that. And so we're excited to continue to press that. We actually have an article that was just published in Forbes, and that will be presented tomorrow as part of our Thought Leader Forum, talking about jobs of the future and workforce transformation. And so we're excited for that work. So why do we do it? Well, we do it because Mike's terrible at retirement, for starters. Maybe the worst guy I've ever seen at it. But we also do it because we love it. We believe that there's a lot of great work that's happening with economic development, with chambers, and even with the great work that GPEC does, and we work closely with them. But there's nobody that's consistently telling the story of the region, and so we're excited about the opportunity to augment the great work that's already happening, and we create opportunities to do that together with Bill and with Jay and others from that from your economic development organization. We're grateful for that. And again, as we said at the beginning, we simply advocate and we convene. And we don't want to overstate our role, but we think there's great value in that. And respectfully, we don't know that there's anybody standing behind us to say, if you decide you're tired and you don't want to do it anymore, there's nobody that's doing it in the same space that we are. And so that's the role that we function in. We're grateful for the opportunity to do it. We're grateful to serve alongside your team, to work with you, and to serve with the great communities that we are able to receive support from, and from the businesses that believe in us. And ultimately, we're doing what we believe is best for the region, just as we know that each of you in your roles of service are doing the same. So we're thankful and grateful for the opportunity. We appreciate your service and the opportunity that we have to be here tonight, and we'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Danny. Council, any questions? Mr. Thompson?
I always have to ask the question because I asked the same thing of GPEC and everyone else that the city does work with. But and you don't have to answer it now if you want to put it together. But I asked GPEC the same thing. What is Mesa getting for its money? What have you brought to Mesa for the money that we're contributing to PHX East Valley Partnership?
Well, Councilmember Thompson, thank you for that question, and I appreciate the perspective that you bring. I think it's a fair question and one that ought to be asked. I think there's, and the same could be said for GPEC, and I know Chris was with you and he can tell his own story, but I don't know that the story is remarkably different. Ultimately, there's a leveraging effect that the city invests a significant amount of resources in East Valley Partnership. It's $15,000 a year. That means a lot to the partnership. I recognize that in the scale of the budget for the city of Mesa that you manage, it isn't that much. It's a lot to us because we take that and we use that to leverage that with our other partners, specifically all the private sector investors that come in and want to be part of what we do, to make sure that we're putting that message out. And if we go, I'm not smart enough to go backwards on this slide. There you go. You know, there's certain things that happen. Again, you look at the work that happens with Bill and Jay and the City of Mesa team. They're doing a great job. They're very focused on the City of Mesa, and they should be. That's who pays them. That's why they're here. On the other hand, there's a compelling story to be told about the region, because the region, the individual parts are powerful, but when you put all those together, we think there's even a greater value, and that's the story that we tell. And so the value to Mesa, it's hard to quantify. I'm not going to make up some statistic or metric, because those are hard to do. Everybody wants to take credit for everything that happens. In the end, our story and our purpose has been pretty consistent. And I think you understand that, Mr. Thompson, about the role that we play. But it's just to make sure that people understand the value of what this region has to offer. We have about 25% of the population that live in the PHX East Valley, yet we have well over 40% of the jobs. And it's not just the average jobs, it's the exceptional jobs. Now, don't get me wrong, we want all jobs. Every job is a good job. But if you can get certain high-paying jobs, either in advanced manufacturing, tech, bioscience, biospace, fintech, what does that bring with it? It brings all the secondary and tertiary jobs that are critical to a vibrant and robust economy. And so our focus is to beat the drum about why people want to come here and bring those jobs, because a win in Gilbert, if it's 1,500 jobs for Deloitte and Gilbert, that absolutely has impact on Mesa. Just like all the good things that are happening right on the lake at Marina Heights in Tempe. That's become the epicenter of the office market in the Phoenix MSA. It's not downtown. It's not the Biltmore. It's Tempe Town Lake. Does that benefit Mesa? Absolutely. It benefits the groundbreaking activity that just happened at Riverview with the Harvard project there. And our goal is just to keep telling those stories and tell people why they want to be here. And we hope they listen. We recognize that to some it's just white noise, but we're not going to give up, and we're grateful for the opportunity. And that's our value proposition. And I know it maybe sounds weak, I don't know. But it's what we do. And I think we do it with a pretty lean operation in a way that has shown that we've got staying power now coming on 40 years. And one thing that we're focused on, Mike and I, is that we stay in our lane and that we focus on those things that we can really do to bring awareness and attention to the positive things that are happening around us. So thank you for the question. I don't know if that sounds like a political non-answer,
You're
but
fine, Denny. And I'm glad that you guys are staying in your lanes, because I know a couple of years ago, there was some weaving going on, competing with the chambers, and some of the chambers had their heckles up a little bit.
Yeah.
We're upset because of that, but thank you, that was fine.
Can I jump in?
Please, fine.
You know, the other value is there's some really critical issues that you know about and the community knows about. Transportation funding, both regionally and throughout the state, getting our education system adequately funded, a huge deal. And we're going to be in the mix with our advocacy group and our lobbying. And, you know, once those get on ballots, some of those issues will get on ballots down the road. You know, historically, the partnership's been able to rally support, financial and political support, to help get those passed. And there's certainly going to be a group in the region, you know, in Central Phoenix and Westmark doing that, and we'll be there with them.
And we'll be working alongside you, frankly, to make sure that we bring that home. Thank you.
Mr. Luna.
Mike, Denny, I know that Rock was really working hard on the transportation corridor. Can you describe some of the history as a result of that, particularly as it relates to Southeast Mesa? Do you remember that conversation? Do you remember Rock talking about how active he was in ensuring that we had adequate transportation going into that area, because he saw tremendous growth in that area?
Well, Rock was involved, and actually Denny was involved with a ULI study in that region, which I think, you know, we were the partnership, and I was still at the city in 2004 when the last sales tax election was brought to the public and passed.
At that point, the reauthorization.
Passed. So Rock has always been active in that. He helped raise money. He helped tell a story throughout the region. I think there's still issues in that part of the Southeast Valley that need to be addressed, but there's been great progress over the last year, trying to solve some of those congestion issues down there. You know, in the regional transportation work that MAG's going to be doing, I'm sure the city will be well represented, and we're going to hopefully weigh in on those too. So.
To your question, council member, I had the privilege of serving on MAG Regional Council for many years, and that's one of those unique bodies where you've got a bunch of people that frankly have competing political interests yet come together, and they're supposed to be finding harmony and reasons to work together. I think we do that all the time naturally in the PHS East Valley. I think Mesa's done a lot of heavy lifting. Mike referenced some of the challenges still in the Southeast Valley. Mr. Brady and your team has worked very closely with the neighbors, and you all know that because you ultimately approved the resources to get things done to solve some of those north-south connections and other issues. But ultimately, those transportation corridors that have been worked on and preserved, you know, nobody here in this room can take credit for it, not even Rock Arnett, even though he was critical in that. That took decades of planning by people that got ahead of it to say, we need these resources in place. The Gateway area is what it is because in part of those transportation infrastructure resources. The hope is that 20 years down the road, somebody isn't sitting in a room like this and says, where were those guys 20 years ago? Were they asleep? And for my part, and I can speak for Mike on this because I know how passionate, we're not going to be asleep on it. We believe that Maricopa County is the fastest growing county now for the third year in a row. You can say, well, that's a bad thing, or you can say that's a great thing. Well, it's only a great thing if we stay ahead of it. And if we plan, and if we lead, and we're going to follow your lead as really the kind of the OG in the region, if I can say that. You're the largest jurisdiction. You've led the charge on a lot of issues. You've hit your maturity cycle ahead of everyone around you, and you've set a great example. And you've done a lot to elevate the region, and the region sees that. We can't go anywhere and not hear people talk about the good that's happening, and Mesa's always in that conversation. And I'm not saying that because I happen to be sitting here in your chambers. Ultimately, we have to continue that idea that what we do together, we do better, that if we can continue to work together as a region organically like we've done, not in a contrived way like sometimes happens at MAG, that I think we can see great things continue out here, and people will see the value of this region. They'll bring jobs, and if we have jobs, and people are working and doing what they love and gainfully employed, guess what? We're going to find a way to solve for great transportation infrastructure and healthcare delivery systems and great educational institutions, and the sun's going to shine, and we're going to have a vibrant community. And that's and look, we don't do that. We just talk about it and hope that people listen. So that's our story. We've again, we're delighted to be here and grateful for your support. Sounds like we have another question, Councilman Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Danny. Just for the record, that groundbreaking at Riverview, that's called the Union. I want you to remember that one.
Yeah, the Union.
I want you to sell that.
Hey, I was there.
It's called the Union. 6,500 new jobs will hopefully come to that area.
Yeah,
So
1.2 million square feet of GLA. It's
Yeah.
an incredible project
let's not
right
forget
in the
about
city
that
of
one.
Mesa. No, we haven't forgot about it.
It's a great
But
project.
thank you.
Yeah.
And at that same morning, Mike was at a meeting in Chandler talking about transportation with a bunch of transportation leaders. And that's the magic of what we do. We kind of divide up and we go and we cover as much ground as we can. And we're delighted to do it. So thank you for the opportunity. Grateful to be here tonight. We're grateful for your support. We would certainly entertain any questions. I think you guys, anybody knows how to get a hold of me. My cell phone number is 602-818-2737. It's not a secret. Same number I've had for 20 years.
He does answer it.
Huh?
I say you do answer it.
And I do answer the phone. I may not always have an answer, but I promise to get back to you. And that's my number, and certainly we're grateful to be here, so thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions, Council? Thank you. Let me just say I really value the East Valley Partnership. I appreciate the good work that you do. Mesa is Mesa for sure, but we all need to remind ourselves Mesa is also the East Valley. And the collaboration that occurs at the East Valley Partnership, the opportunity to meet with the business leaders there, the other communities, is invaluable. So I just want to give you an endorsement and say thank you for the great work you're doing. And you have done on transportation and other issues, but you're never more relevant or important than you are right now. So thank you for the good work you're doing.
Thank you, Mayor Giles.
You bet.
Grateful to be here.
You bet. The next item on our agenda then is item 2B. That's to hear a presentation from the Human Relations Advisory Board on their 2017-19 strategic plan accomplishments. Welcome, Andrea and Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Ron Williams. I am a 20-year Mesa resident. I am also a decorated U.S. Air Force veteran, Desert Storm era, and a local business owner. I want to thank the Mayor and City Council for the opportunity to address you today with our Human Relations Advisory Board accomplishments for 2017 to 2019. I'm humbled to serve as chair of this advisory board, and I want to thank our recent chairs, Dr. Cliff Moon and Dr. Colleen Byron, for their hard work, especially to Dr. Colleen Byron as she continues to serve on the board as one of our longest serving members. Here to co-present this presentation with me today is Andrea Alicote from the Diversity and Neighborhood Services Offices and the liaison to our board. On our next slide is our mission statement, which is simple: to create an inclusive, respectful, and equitable community. On the next slide, now that Andrea will speak to our community education programs and events.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First, I want to recognize Mr. Ron Williams for taking such a leadership role in the short amount of time that he has been serving with us. So he has been on the board for a year now and really has made an impact not only in the conclusion of this particular strategic planning, but also going to lead us very thoughtfully moving forward as well. So one of the pillars of the board has been community education through programs and events, and we will be discussing several of the successful events that the board has been facilitating in the past years.
On our next slide, in partnership with Mesa Public Schools, I attended my first annual Youth Peace Building Summit, and I was really encouraged by the young men and women who autonomously led the breakout sessions and the discussions. Even though we as adults were in the room as chaperones, they really didn't need us in the room. They did a great job. And Andrea will share more about that particular event.
So the annual Youth Peace Building Summit has been an event that the board has held for 4 years now successfully. We are going into our 5th year this spring. The It's a day-long event where we have in the past partnered with Mesa Public Schools, but this next year, because it will be our 5th year, we are going to be inclusive with other school districts and just students across Mesa by opening up our availability for participation citywide. It is a day-long event, again, where we are working with the students on peace-building curriculum, giving them leadership skills and personal growth opportunities, so that way they can take those lessons that they have learned from the day back into their school and help make an impact working with the teachers and counselors that are also there that day to participate. In this next year, we will also be looking to incorporate a service component, which again is going to be putting that impact back into the city of Mesa and giving the students and the youth an ownership into building Mesa as a community. The next event that we want to highlight is the annual Women's Empowerment Summit. The board has held this event successfully for the 2 years and is going to be looking to host it again for a 3rd year this spring. In the past 2 summits, we have focused on a variety of different topics such as human trafficking, cultural norms or limitations for females, equity and female representation, either locally within the community or on a national scale. Again, in this 3rd year, because it is a significant year for us that we'll be hosting this event, we will really be tailoring it towards local issues, looking to hear from the community and create a platform for a dialogue. Some topics that have already surfaced, equal pay or economic and job attainment for females, and again, looking to impact the city of Mesa. Another successful program has been in partnership with our diversity office, and that has been our Arizona PBS, ITVS Pop-Up documentary film series. We have a contract with PBS to host 6 documentary film series a couple of weeks before they are previewed on Channel 8 PBS. And through those, we are able to bring in dialogue facilitators, topic experts to help spark community conversation based on the film topics. As you can see, we've hosted Dolores. Last year, the highlight was the Won't You Be My Neighbor, Mr. Rogers films. So there's a lot of community impact dialogues that happen within these films, and it's just a great platform that the board has been able to utilize to be able to spark conversation and gain that community input. Another strong pillar for the board has been measurable and data-driven goals. Mayor, you came and spoke to the board a couple of years ago, right at the beginning of the strategic plan for this particular year set, and highlighted the importance of data and how we can measure diversity both within the board and through the community. While we're still going to be tackling the community portion, we have identified some measures that the board themselves have been holding themselves accountable for.
On the next slide, Mayor and City Council, we understand that the Mayor and City Council certainly understands the importance of having a diverse membership on this Human Relations Advisory Board. I believe it would be challenging to have meaningful and learning discussions without diverse voices and ideas being at the table. I know that not all agencies in Mesa value and respect inclusiveness and diversity, but I am confident about the fact that this Mayor and City Council does. So on our next slide, Andrea will speak to the monthly events and Human Relations Advisory Board member attendance activity.
So the board also tracks various events or meetings that they participate in on behalf of their personal selves, employments, because they bring a wealth of knowledge to their seats at the board chairs. So many of them have various roles where they have topics and are attending various conferences where they're able then to share that information at their monthly meetings or be able to make comments and ask questions through the various presentations that we hear. So we do track those events that they participate in and are able to wear the dual representation as board members.
On this next slide, it speaks to the collaboration with the regional human relations commissioners throughout the valley. Back in another life in another municipality, I served in the role of liaison to the Mayor's Human Relations Commission like Andrea. I served at a time when we started the conversation of having these regional events. So I was pleased to see that we're still having these important collaborations. Andrea will share more about those collaborations.
This is a great opportunity to not only host, as you'll see from this picture, we were able to host it at our Natural History Museum and bring folks to come from other regions, as we just learned the importance of regional collaboration, and really discuss a lot of the topics that are concerning us, not just in Mesa, but across the East Valley and more. So these particular events give us an opportunity to hear how other surrounding neighbors are tackling some of the challenging issues that we may face, and really give us that opportunity to include that in future strategic plannings.
And finally, before we conclude, if it's allowed, Mayor, I'd like to recognize any Human Relations Board members that may be in the audience here tonight. I know that Joseph Holmes is here. I know of someone else that snuck in. But I just want to share that we had a great meeting with the mayor and members of his team regarding some direction and future expectations for this advisory board. Our members have some great ideas that we will seek to implement. One in particular is to develop some forums to educate our Mesa residents and welcome their voice. We don't get many visitors at our public meetings down here in the basement here. So we decided to develop something where we can go out and visit the public. I want to again thank Andrea for being here today to support this presentation. I also want to thank Cisco, who's in the back of the room. He is a program assistant from their office. They are our lifeline to this board, and we appreciate all of their hard work and support. And thank you for allowing us to present this important update, and we'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Ron and Andrea. Questions, Council? Yes, Mr. Luna.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Andrea, for this. I was actually an inaugural Human Relations Advisory Board member.
Yes, we
I
know.
was appointed by Mayor Brown in 1999, so that's a long time ago.
Yes.
And one of the things that we worked on was, as a result of 9/11, there was a lot of racial profiling. And so we tackled that issue. It was a real important issue that we wanted to make sure that we worked on. So thank you for your work and collaboration. I know that you have a lot on your plate. But I want to let you know that we truly appreciate all your work. And I see Mark Tomper's still on your board.
He actually just retired and termed out in
Okay.
May. So
Okay.
he had fulfilled his full amount of allotted commitment and
Okay.
has collectively served over 14 years to the
Yeah,
board.
he was with me on the Human Relations Advisory Board.
Yes.
As well as former council member Mr. Fincher. We both served together. That's how I got to know him as well. So thank you so much for your work. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman Luna.
Well, I'll just say amen to that. Mesa obviously is a very diverse community, and so the importance of the Human Relations Advisory Board can't be overstated. So thank you for the good work that you do there, and we look forward to getting your counsel and advice as we go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you
And thank
again.
you for allowing the board the opportunity to come and present their great work.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is item 3. That's approval of minutes from 3 prior executive sessions. Councilors, a motion to approve that. Thank you, Mr. Freeman, and a second. Thank you, Ms. Duff. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Passes unanimously. Item 4 is acknowledge receipt of board minutes. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Seconded by Mr. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Passes unanimously. Item 5 is to hear reports on meetings and conferences attended. I know we've been off a week, so maybe have some catching up to do.
I'll go first, Mayor.
Aaron?
Yeah, thank you. We had a community meeting out in Lehigh, and we had 82 people come, and then with staff, there were about 100 people there. Had a great turnout and had a great discussion with a lot of the different department heads. And then following that, a lot of my colleagues were in San Antonio already at NLC, and I gathered and went to a lot of breakout sessions, and I learned a lot. In fact, we're gathering some information today to maybe implement in Mesa, so some of you department heads, be ready. I've already talked to some of them about it. But also, Mayor, we had lunch at Hermosa Vista School with a young man named Scott McKenzie, and Scott was burned over 50% of his body due to an accident at a neighbor's home. And so the we wanted to reach out to him and support him at his school, and had lunch with him, and the fire crew who had responded to the call was there, and the family was so appreciative. Scott was very appreciative because, you know, he's still struggling with some of the therapy, the physical therapy, and, you know, overcoming his injuries, but he's back at school doing well, and so it just shows some camaraderie for him and the fire crew and everybody else, and reaching out to him and letting him know it's okay. It's going to hurt for a while, but hopefully he can heal up very well. So anyway, that's my report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it being included in the Scott McKenzie thing. It was fun to see the way the firefighters that dealt with that very difficult situation, the bond that they created with that young man, and how excited they were to see the progress that he'd made. And that was thanks for including me in that. Other comments? Jen?
Of course, I have to bring up the Santa Claus came to town on Friday. We had Merry Main Street kickoff with a tree lighting, and Santa did arrive in his antique fire truck. And there was a market there, and it continues through January 4th. January 4th. The ice skating rink is also open. And on Saturday, I wanted to thank everybody for supporting Small Business Saturday. I was in downtown, as well as a lot of other people, doing their Christmas shopping and going to all the shops, and there's a little contest and everything like that, as well attended. And so we have a great downtown with more and more shops, restaurants, and things to do, and I appreciate their involvement as well as the public in supporting Small Business Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I keep adding on, but just another commercial for Merry Main Street. So the ice rink is open every day from 5 o'clock to 10 weekdays, and from noon to 10 on weekends, both Saturday and Sunday. So for a nominal fee, I think it's $10, you can rent skates, get to go. It's really the most affordable way to go ice skating, and it's outside under the swaying palm trees, and wear your short sleeve shirt and get a tan while you do it. So. And the next 2 weekends, we probably need to put in a plug for the Polar Express. That's right. So you bring your kids in their pajamas. It's free. Santa's there. They get a cookie. They get a bell. You kind of recreate the Polar Express story. That's the next 2 weekends, both Fridays and Saturdays. And so there's multiple times. So check online before you bundle the kids up and come down. But that's a not to be missed experience if you haven't done that. Yes, Mr. Luna.
Yes, I was at NLC. It was a real busy event. A lot of great workshops, and learned a lot, and glad to come back to the city of Mesa to implement.
Can you say what you were elected to?
Yes, I'm the chairman for HELO, Hispanic Elected Local Officials.
Thank you. That's a very prestigious national position, so we're proud of you. Appreciate the great way you're representing our city at NLC. Other comments? Because we took a week off, because we were out of town last week, I want to just give a shout out to Turkey Tuesday, particularly the engineering department. They stepped up and they contributed. They received over 1,500 turkeys that were donated to the United Food Bank. So thank you to Beth in our engineering department for doing that. Also, I had a great visit at a New Leaf out of La Mesita, their after-school program. Had some really tough questions from the kids there, focused a lot of them around, they want to know how we knew Mesa was a city of 500,000 people. And I said, well, we actually count them. And that led into an interesting discussion about the census. So, Mr. Reddy, I was out, doing missionary work for the census, and we just need to remind everybody that's coming up next year. That's a very important event. Also, a great event a week ago that we haven't had a chance to talk about is the opening of Fat Cats. This is right there at Wrecker and the 202, right next to the big, beautiful new Sprouts. Every parking lot in that, every car in that parking lot was full on opening night. So that place is going to be, they're going to wear it out. And I know the folks in Mr. Luna's district are happy to see a great new entertainment venue come to their part of town. So it has been a busy week or two. Anything else we'd like to talk about? All right, Mr. Brady, can you update us on our calendar?
Yes, Mayor. So we are getting close to kind of wrapping up the year. So our next study session will be this Thursday, December 5th. And that'll include a Mesa Housing Services Governing Board meeting. And then it will be followed, the study session will be followed by a Community and Cultural Development Committee meeting at 8. And then just a reminder, our final council meeting for this year, for 2019, will be a week from tonight, on December 9th. We'll have study session and a city council meeting. We will have another study session prior to the city council meeting on the 9th.
Okay. Thank you. We do have on our agenda an executive session. Is there a motion to convene an executive session? Thank you, Mr. Luna and Mr. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. We will now convene an executive session.